Have you ever felt that strange sensation of finally finding yourself at home when you are alone? That deep peace that descends upon you when the external voices, the incessant solicitations, the constant noise of social life finally cease. These moments reveal a truth that our hyper-connected era struggles to recognize. Solitude is not a lack to be filled, but a sacred space to be cultivated. Chosen solitude differs fundamentally from suffered isolation. Where isolation cuts us off from the world by necessity or by wound, voluntary solitude connects us to it more deeply by allowing us to discover who we truly are when social masks fall away. It is in this chosen silence that we can finally hear the voice of our deep nature, often drowned in the din of external expectations. Taoist monks have developed this science of solitude with remarkable sophistication. Withdrawn in their mountain monasteries or isolated hermitages, they have systematically explored the transformations that prolonged solitary life produces. Their chronicles speak of these hermits who spent years in caves, descending to the village only for essential provisions, and who developed legendary serenity and wisdom. Zhuangzi develops this idea with remarkable subtlety, describing solitude not as an emptiness, but as a particular plenitude. In this Taoist classic, we discover that true solitude leads us toward the perception of this fundamental unity that transcends the ordinary divisions between self and world. This philosophical solitude does not separate us from existence, but reveals our deep unity with it. This perspective radically transforms our understanding of what it means to be alone. Instead of seeing it as a deprivation of company, we begin to perceive it as a privileged conversation with the deepest dimension of our being. In this silent conversation, we discover truths about ourselves that remain inaccessible in the agitation of social interactions. Our modern era has created a true phobia of solitude. We fill every free moment with external stimulation, notifications, entertainment, virtual or real interaction. This permanent flight from ourselves creates a form of existential anesthesia that cuts us off from our natural capacity for introspection and regeneration. Yet the contemplative tradition teaches us that it is precisely in these moments of voluntary withdrawal that true inner growth occurs. Laozi expresses this beautifully. Thus the sages are at peace and therefore at ease. Being at ease, they are detached. Being at ease and detached, they are inaccessible to anxiety and not susceptible to mental imbalance. This description reveals one of the most precious benefits of chosen solitude, the natural pacification of the mind. In the silence of solitude, our thoughts cease swirling in all directions to regain their natural course. Like a troubled river that regains its transparency when agitation ceases, our consciousness rediscovers its original clarity when we offer it this space of tranquility. This clarity is not passive, but profoundly active. It allows us to see our mental patterns, understand our automatic reactions, distinguish between our true needs and our conditioned desires. This quality of attention that solitude develops constitutes one of its most precious fruits. In social life, our attention constantly fragments between different external solicitations. We lose this capacity for deep presence that allows us to truly inhabit our experience. Solitude returns this integral presence to us, this quality of being entirely where we are. Liezi illustrates this transformation through the striking story of the Yellow Emperor, who, after 15 years of government in constant agitation, discovers the limits of external action. He abandoned his administrative activities, ceased sleeping in his seraglio, dismissed his servants, and withdrew into solitude to purify his mind and regain control of his body, taking no personal role in government for 3 months. This withdrawal reveals to him a form of wisdom inaccessible in perpetual action. This parable reveals a profound truth. There exist dimensions of wisdom that can only be discovered in voluntary withdrawal from the world. These discoveries concern not only our inner life, but radically transform our way of being in the world. The emperor who emerges from his retreat governs with new efficiency and justness, precisely because he has learned to act from this peaceful center that only solitude can reveal. Chosen solitude also liberates us from what we could call the tyranny of others' gaze. In social life, we constantly adapt our behavior to the perceived expectations of our environment. This perpetual adaptation, even when it remains unconscious, progressively cuts us off from our natural authenticity. We end up no longer knowing who we truly are under all these social masks. The silence of solitude naturally dissolves these masks. When there is no longer anyone to impress, reassure, or convince, we can finally release these constant tensions and rediscover our natural way of being. This rediscovery can sometimes surprise us. We realize that certain aspects of our social personality were actually adaptations that didn't truly correspond to us. This recovered authenticity is not only personally liberating, it also transforms the quality of our relationships with others. When we know who we are in solitude, we can meet others from this truth rather than from our defense mechanisms or adaptation strategies. Paradoxically, solitude prepares us for more authentic and nourishing relationships. Wenzi expresses this liberation with striking beauty. If nothing obscures the mind and nothing burdens the mental, you are completely clear and perfectly in harmony, peaceful and carefree. Power and profit cannot tempt you. Sound and form cannot seduce you. This description reveals how solitude progressively frees us from the conditionings that ordinarily direct our lives. This inner freedom doesn't mean indifference to the world, but rather a superior form of engagement. When we are no longer moved by fear, greed, or the need for recognition, we can respond to situations from our wisdom rather than from our automatic reactivities. This quality of presence transforms our actions, even the simplest ones, into expressions of our deep nature. The regular practice of solitude also develops this precious quality, which is the capacity to enjoy one's own company. In a society that has made boredom an enemy to be fought at all costs, rediscovering the simple pleasure of being with oneself represents a personal revolution. This capacity fundamentally transforms our relationship to existence. We cease needing the world to constantly entertain us to discover that life itself, observed with attention, is infinitely fascinating. This fascination with the immediate present constitutes one of the most delicious fruits of cultivated solitude. When our mind is no longer dispersed by 1,000 external solicitations, we can finally perceive the subtle richness of each instant. the play of light on objects, the particular texture of our emotions, the incessant dance of our thoughts, the mysterious pulsation of life itself. Zhuangzi teaches us that this refined attention leads us toward a particular perception. Not mixing with people is the epitome of detachment. Being neither for nor against anything is the epitome of purity. This detachment is not indifference, but a superior form of love. A love that doesn't impose its conditions on reality, but welcomes it as it is. This deep acceptance born from solitary contemplation transforms our relationship to the difficulties of existence. Instead of constantly fighting against what displeases us or clinging to what pleases us, we learn this inner suppleness that allows us to dance with changes rather than resist them. This suppleness doesn't make us passive, but on the contrary, more effective, because our action springs from understanding rather than emotional reaction. Solitude also teaches us the value of fertile emptiness. In our lives, saturated with activity and information, we have forgotten that authentic creation is born from emptiness, silence, unfilled space. All great creators know this intuitively. The most original ideas, the most accurate intuitions, the most elegant solutions emerge in these moments of withdrawal where the mind can finally breathe. This creativity born from silence is not limited to arts or sciences. It concerns all dimensions of existence, our way of solving daily problems, understanding others, navigating the complexity of modern life. Solitude returns to us this capacity for existential innovation that allows us to respond to new situations with freshness, rather than with our habitual automatisms. The Tao Te Ching reveals this truth in its description of authentic wisdom. The sages have no mind of their own. Their mind is the mind of the people. This paradoxical affirmation reveals how well understood solitude leads us not toward egocentrism, but toward a form of universal empathy. It is by knowing ourselves deeply that we discover what fundamentally unites us to all human beings. This compassion born from solitude differs qualitatively from ordinary emotional sympathy. It doesn't depend on mood or circumstances, but springs from this deep recognition of our common humanity. In the silence of solitary contemplation, we touch these dimensions of human experience that transcend our superficial differences: joy, suffering, hope, fear, love, mortality. This universality discovered in solitude paradoxically prepares us for deeper and more authentic relationships. When we have learned to be truly alone, we can meet others without projecting onto them our needs for fulfillment or validation. This encounter, free from hidden demands, allows the emergence of this rare quality which is disinterested love. The Taoist tradition also teaches us that solitude reveals our natural rhythm, often masked by the demands of the social world. In collective life, we constantly adapt to external rhythms: work schedules, social obligations, media time. This permanent adaptation cuts us off from our organic temporality, creating a form of chronic lag with ourselves. Solitude returns this inner synchronization to us. We rediscover our moments of greatest creativity, our real needs for rest, our cycles of energy and withdrawal. This reconnection with our natural rhythm considerably improves our quality of life and our efficiency, because we cease forcing against our nature to learn to collaborate with it. This collaboration with our deep nature extends to all aspects of existence. In solitude, we learn to distinguish between our true needs and our conditioned desires, between our authentic aspirations and the ambitions we have internalized from our social environment. This subtle discrimination guides us toward life choices more aligned with our inner truth. Wenzi expresses this existential justness. Those we call sages adapt to their true conditions. That's all. This adaptation to true conditions can only be accomplished when we have learned to perceive these conditions clearly, which requires the distance and tranquility that only solitude can offer. This clarity of perception transforms our relationship to time. Instead of suffering time as an external constraint, we discover that an inner temporality exists, a way of inhabiting each moment that dilates and enriches it. In contemplative solitude, a few minutes can contain an intensity of experience that surpasses hours of external agitation. This temporal quality reveals one of solitude's best-kept secrets. It makes us discover eternity in the present instant. When our mind ceases constantly traveling between past and future to anchor itself in the now, we touch this timeless dimension of existence that mystical traditions call the eternal present. This experience of the timeless and the temporal heals one of the deepest wounds of the modern human condition: anxiety about passing time. When we know how to fully inhabit the present, the race against the clock loses its obsessive character to give way to joyful participation in life's flow. Zhuangzi reveals this temporal liberation in his description of the ideal state, when the mind is neither afflicted nor content. This is the epitome of character. Unity without change is the epitome of tranquility. This unity without change doesn't designate stagnation, but this quality of being that remains stable at the heart of all changes, like the motionless axis around which the wheel turns. This inner stability, fruit of solitary practice, becomes our portable refuge in all the storms of existence. Once we have discovered this peaceful center within ourselves, we can carry it everywhere and draw from it this serenity that no longer depends on external circumstances. Cultivating solitude, however, requires progressive learning. Our era has so accustomed us to constant stimulation that silence can at first seem uncomfortable or even anxiety-provoking. This initial resistance is normal and simply reveals how much we have lost the habit of our own company. This resistance often manifests through the emergence of agitated thoughts, obsessive preoccupations, or physical restlessness. These phenomena are not obstacles but natural stages of the process of returning to ourselves. Like troubled water that takes time to become clear again, our consciousness needs time to rediscover its natural transparency. Patience with ourselves thus becomes an essential quality in this exploration. Instead of forcing silence or judging ourselves for our agitation, we learn to welcome with benevolence everything that emerges in our consciousness. This acceptance without judgment progressively creates the inner space necessary for true tranquility. This benevolence toward ourselves, developed in solitude, also transforms our relationship to others. When we have learned to welcome our own difficulties with compassion, we naturally develop this same compassion for others' struggles. Solitude thus becomes a school of true love. Liesi illustrates this transformation through his description of the mythical country of Huashu, where people had neither habits nor desires. They were simply natural. They didn't know how to love life or hate death. They climbed into the air like walking on the ground, slept in space like in a bed. This poetic description evokes the state of total freedom that well-understood solitude can reveal. This freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but their accomplishment from a state of natural spontaneity. When our actions spring from our deep nature rather than from our conditionings, they acquire a fluidity and justness that transforms our efficiency in the world. This new efficiency no longer seeks to force situations, but to harmonize with their natural movement. Like water that always finds its way to the sea by embracing the contours of the terrain, we learn to accomplish our intentions by intelligently adapting to circumstances rather than systematically resisting them. This adaptive suppleness, born from solitary contemplation, reveals one of wisdom's most beautiful paradoxes. It is by fully accepting what is that we acquire the power to transform it. This transformation no longer comes from force, but from understanding, no longer from opposition, but from inclusion. Solitude finally teaches us that we are never truly alone. In the deepest silence, we discover our mysterious participation in the living fabric of existence. This discovery transforms solitude from privation into communion, from isolation into union with the whole. This mystical union is not an exceptional experience reserved for saints and sages, but our natural condition that ordinary distractions prevent us from perceiving. Solitude doesn't create this union, but reveals what was already there. Like night reveals the stars that the day's sun hides from us. This revelation radically transforms the meaning of our existence. We cease perceiving ourselves as isolated islands in an indifferent universe to discover ourselves as unique expressions of cosmic creativity. This recognition gives deep meaning to every moment of our life, even the most ordinary. For authentic goodness is not what allows us to love more people, but what helps us love better. It doesn't make us perfect, but makes us true. It doesn't elevate us above our humanity, but connects us to its most beautiful essence. In this reconciliation with our deep loving nature, perhaps lies one of the most precious keys for fully inhabiting this existence that unites us all, a key that only chosen solitude can reveal to us.